All right, everybody. Welcome to the Blue Heart Podcast. I'm your host, Lieutenant Joe. And one of the things that we're going to talk about, we talk about police work and how to do it. And we talk about war stories, tales from the road. And we have a lot of fun with those kind of things. But we got to talk about some of the serious things that happen to us as well. And this is for everybody in law enforcement, whether you're in corrections, you're a police officer, sheriff's officer, federal officer, it doesn't matter what you do. If you're involved in the world of law enforcement, you're going to come across some terrible parts of the career. And that would be the stresses that we have to deal with when we see horrible, horrible things. So I know in the course of my career, I have seen many really bad scenes where people have been injured, killed, murdered, brutalized, and it is horrific. And how do we handle it? Well, for most of us in law enforcement, what we do is we have gallows humor. We make jokes about it. If the world heard what we said at some of these crime scenes, they would think we're horrible people. But the reality is people use gallows humor to deal with the stress of what they're seeing. And it's my premise that it's that stress over time, over the course of a career, that leads people in our business to kill themselves more than in any other profession. Number two is dentists. Now, why it would be dentists, I have no idea. You open your mouth, you're drilling people. Maybe they don't like it. I don't know. But it's police and dentists, usually the one and two in there. And that is a horrific thing. And I've known officers, as I'm sure some of you do, that have killed themselves. And we have to find a way to overcome this. And we have to deal with this stress and put these things in a box, right? You can't have these ghosts chasing you the rest of your life. So to help me do that, my guest today is Susan Marco. Now, Susan, very, very interesting, very talented, highly educated woman here, is a clinical hypnotist. Okay, clinical hypnotist. We're going to get into that. And she's also a self-empowerment and mindset mentor. So, Susan, welcome aboard the Blue Heart Podcast.
Joe, thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege to be here.
Oh, that's very nice. And it's a privilege to talk to the men and women of law enforcement, not so much to me. But I thank you for saying that's nice. Now, you heard my little opening there about the reality of officers taking their lives, and marriages are ruined, cops are all divorced, a lot of alcoholism, drug stuff going on. How does clinical hypnotism fit into that, and helping someone be a self-empowerment mentor? How does that help?
Yeah, so I want to just give a little addendum to me and where I come from.
Sure.
My husband is a retired police chief. So, we haven't been married since the very beginning. I came on the scene with him a little bit later in our lives and in his life as an officer. But I had the good grace to meet so many wonderful police officers, and my understanding and appreciation for law enforcement has grown so much through that. So I wanted to just, say that I have the utmost respect and gratitude for what you guys and girls do out there on the road every day.
Well, thank you very much.
So,
And I know people appreciate that. And,
yeah.
What I say all the time, I teach law enforcement all over. And I said, I've been in this business long enough to have seen us go from heroes to zeros and back again. And right now we're in a little trough. People don't like us, but they're starting to realize how much they need law enforcement, because we don't do the things people say we do. We don't hate people. We don't chase people for the wrong reasons. And unless you get the inside scoop in that, people, I could see where the media pounding us every second, and that has to add to people's stress. I know officers I talk to now across the country are saying, yeah, we kind of do what we're supposed to do, what we have to do. And, we're not so proactive anymore. And that's the only thing that really keeps the community safe, is proactive policing. But I don't want to cut you off.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
All right. So that's okay. So, it's complex, right? There are a lot of things that add up to that when you get to that point where you feel like you just don't want to go on, or you can't continue, or, the stresses of, hero to zero, and that, you sign up to do this job and you think your purpose is to keep people safe and to do the job that many other people are not willing to do. And then you're met with that kind of resistance, or worse than that, right? So in my experience, the real key to healing that is, number one, recognizing that it's okay. it's okay if you have those feelings. And I know that, you know, in the field, it's not something that is often safe to talk about. You know, you don't want your, you know, officers to, you don't want anyone else to know that you're going through something so emotionally difficult.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, I can go on and about that for a long time. I don't think I need to cover that.
No, but I think a point to jump in right there when you're saying that, the problem is if I'm a plumber and I tell
Right.
people I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling upset, they'll
Right.
send me for help. If I'm an officer and I say that, they'll take away my gun and my badge and get me help,
Exactly.
and then my career
Exactly.
is over. So that's a stumbling point for getting help, I think.
Yeah. So that being said, though, I want to explain to you a little bit for those who don't know what is hypnosis. So hypnosis is one of the most natural states of being. We are, all of us are in and out of hypnotic trance every single day, 100 times a day. Hypnotic trance is like when you fall in love, that butterfly feeling that you have and your mind kind of shuts down a little. So you can only think about that person that you're, you know, where your affection is directed. That's a state of trance. Um, Driving down the road, who hasn't had the experience of you've you've taken this route, you know where you're going, you do it all the time, you get where you're going and you say, did I pass the church? I don't remember making that turn. I don't re-
You're
That's a
right.
state of trance. Okay. Now it's a little scary if you think about, wait a minute, I'm going into trance while I'm driving. All right, so here's the thing. There are two sides of the brain. There's the conscious part of us and the unconscious part of us. The conscious part of us is everything it's everything we're aware of, right? It's our consciousness. The unconscious part of us is everything else. And what is living or what resides in the unconscious part of our brain is everything we've ever learned, all of our experiences, our traumas, our beliefs, our emotions, our values, morals, memories, all of that lives in the unconscious part of the mind. And guess what? To a great extent, we are unconscious of all of those things.
Mhm.
And so if I have a belief, um, so for instance, I had a belief from when I was young that I was not worthy of being heard. That belief came out of an event, and the event was my father lost his cool with me one day because I wouldn't stop talking, and he yelled at me. And that little girl felt fear and shame in that moment. Now, look, at my father didn't really mean that, but
Mhm.
there was no follow through. He yelled at me, that was that, and I was expected to get over it. But for that 5 year old little sensitive person, that fear and shame led to the belief that, oh, my dad, who is my hero, he's my God, doesn't really want to hear what I have to say.
Mhm.
And what our unconscious mind will do is its primary focus or function is to keep us safe. So we'll have an event, which will be followed by an emotion, and that emotion will be followed by a belief. And for me, the belief was, I'm not worthy of being heard. And so through my life, from 5 years old and forward, until I made a decision to change that I proved that belief right every time I opened my mouth to speak.
Mhm.
So if I was in a conversation and somebody cut me off in the middle, in the back of my mind was that little voice saying, see, they don't really care. They're not really interested in what you have to say.
Mhm.
So that's just one example. We all have those things.
Sure.
Some people are perhaps less sensitive or more resilient, and they'll just move on and it won't be a thing for them. But many of us, it does become a thing, and it becomes the foundation in that unconscious programming
Mhm.
that runs everything else that we do, or that at least has a major effect. So you can imagine, for me, being in this field of endeavor where I'm mentoring and I'm coaching and I'm teaching people, if I have a belief that people don't want to hear what I have to say, I'm not going to be very successful, am I?
Right.
And
Absolutely not.
it's going to be quite frustrating.
It will affect everything you do.
Exactly. And so what I do with people is I help them uncover what are those beliefs that are leading to their unhappiness or leading to them feeling insecure or that they're stuck in some way,
Hmm.
and, you know, listen, when you deal with the kinds of things that you all are dealing with, you really better have a strong sense of yourself and a strong sense of being able to detach from the things that you're experiencing and seeing.
Hmm.
And
Now,
that's where hypnosis can help, because what we do is we go in a state of hypnosis. What we're really doing is asking the conscious part of the mind to go off and take a break. So we are inducing a state of trance, like when you're driving and you go by that turn or you go by that church and you say, how did I get here? Because you're in that unconscious state.
Now that makes sense to me, but let me ask you a
Yeah,
question. I don't want to cut you off because you are
I
worthy
could
of being
I
heard.
could keep going. I'm on a roll.
I know you're like me. You're passionate about this. I can
Yeah.
tell. So when I start to hear as you're breaking this down, someone that doesn't really, my experience with hypnosis is you go to one of these shows and they hypnotize somebody, they act like a chicken, they run around, they do crazy stuff, and they don't remember it.
Yeah,
What you're saying is that there's a way to use this to help people deal with those emotions or those feelings or those experiences and to bring them out and deal with them so they don't haunt them anymore and they can move on. That's the idea.
absolutely.
Now, when you're in this trance, are
Yeah.
you actually in a trance where you can make me go act like a chicken and I would do it? How is that a game or is that not
So,
part of this?
well, it's different than what I do. I mean, the show hypnosis it's for entertainment.
Hmm.
And what's entertaining about it is that there are some people who have lower inhibitions or don't mind being made fun of,
Hmm.
or are willing to play and be spontaneous and have fun. And
Hmm.
so those people are willing to close their eyes and go into a deeper sense of a trance, a deeper state of
Hmm.
trance, and play
Right.
along with whatever that person is
Okay.
suggesting.
Well, that makes sense to me then.
Yeah,
So
but
if an officer is feeling upset by the things that they see, and sometimes we don't see it right in front, but I know I was affected by seeing little children. You talked about something your dad said to you, and I think you're right. We all have those things. I was a brand new cop, and I went to a domestic where husband and wife constantly fighting, and they were a young couple, and their lives were a train wreck. And I went there one night, and they weren't going to get locked up because they didn't hit each other, but it was just miserable. And this little 3-year-old came out and clung to my leg and
yeah,
said to me, please don't go. And I had to leave her there. I couldn't
yeah,
take her with me. And I had to leave, and to this moment, this has got to be 30 years ago. It still bothers me, that little kid, I had to leave her there. I found over the course of my career to face these things right up front and to put them in their right box so they don't bother me. But I know a lot of officers don't. So if they're having those feelings, they come to you. And what can you do to help them?
what I can do to help them is to have a conversation first. And this is where the mentorship comes in, of helping them unpack what their feelings are about it, what their beliefs are about it. And then we can go about actually reframing or releasing those feelings or those
Mhm.
beliefs. Because there's nothing more damaging mentally or physically holding on to stuck emotion. Most of the illnesses in our culture have to do with, they're most of them stress driven, if you think about it.
I feel like I'm having a therapy session right now. It's
Yeah,
everything you're saying is making sense,
yeah.
and I'm trying to see, wow, if you could save one cop from killing himself or herself, that would be amazing.
So
Um,
it starts with that conversation and that reframe, right?
right.
Let's figure out a way that is, that is comfortable for you. Like, everyone is different. We all have different ways of looking at things.
Hmm.
No two people are the same. There are similarities, certainly, in, culturally and societally, but, basically everyone comes from where they come from. It's like, if you and I could come from the same family, but, Our traumas are going to be different, our memories and experiences, the way that we frame things. So we're going to look at things a little differently.
Hmm.
So we could have an argument, who's right and who's wrong. We both are, because we can
Sure.
only see from our own perspective.
So at
So
what point, I'm sorry, go
allowing,
ahead.
that's okay, allowing space and time for that officer to unpack what is the perspective, how are you feeling, what's going on for you. And then we would use those protocols or processes in that hypnotic state to change how the mind is holding on to it.
It sounds like if everybody really took it seriously and sought out help like this, we could probably, but my question, and that's why I didn't mean to interrupt you, but as I'm thinking this, I'm hearing people out there who are suffering right now.
Yeah.
At what point in that suffering should they reach out? Because people, maybe in the beginning, they don't realize they're suffering.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they'll have an event that maybe clues them in or clues other people around them. Hey, what's wrong? Something's wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, where's the best time for them to seek someone out like you?
The best time for them to seek someone out is anytime. I mean, I don't mean to sound trite, but if you catch it early, if you feel something's not right, there's just something in my chest that shouldn't be there, or in my stomach, or I'm having these thoughts, like anytime is a good time, really.
Mm-hmm. So
Even if you're further down the road, you might need more than a session or a few sessions.
sure. So what are some symptoms that if I knew, here's a list of symptoms that I might be suffering that says, hey, I need to get help. What would it be? Nightmares? Would it be feelings of like agoraphobia? I can't go out anymore, or hearing
Sure.
a certain kind of call and now I freeze up. I mean,
Sure, any of that, any post-traumatic stress, like you see something on a television show and it sparks something for you and you want to go throw up, or
mhm,
you hear a loud sound and you suddenly get on hyper, in that hyper vigilance.
sure. I've
And
seen
what
those things with people.
all of the things that you said, really, it's about sort of having that self-awareness and learning how to self-regulate,
Mhm,
because our nervous systems are not built for that kind of trauma.
right. Well, I'm going to tell you two interesting things. One was in a very big, brutal homicide case that I investigated, and there was all these senior officers around, and I was the lead detective on this thing, and it was a horrific crime scene. It was really bad.
Hmm.
And all these cops were there. And like I said in our opening today, some of them were making jokes and they were saying that. And then we did the right thing is we had a debriefing with a psychologist. All the people that were involved in the call sat around in a room. Psychologist came, brought another psychologist friend, and just started asking us questions about how did it feel to see that? And people were laughing and joking. And it was an old timer in the room who was one of the biggest jokers. And he just brought up, he says, I got to tell you, it didn't really bother me, but seeing that person's head on the floor, man, that was weird. I even had a dream about it. Well, that seemed to open the floodgates, and now everybody was talking,
Yeah.
and I think it helped everybody.
Yeah. I want to say something too that just rolled through my head. So this is how I roll when something hits me. I have to say it. If you're having considerations or doubts about reaching out to work with someone, I don't think there's, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I don't think there's anything that says that you can't reach out for stress reduction.
Hmm.
You're not going to take your gun away because you're stressed.
Yeah, I know that there are parts of law enforcement, if agencies across the country are trying to find ways for officers to come forward
Yeah.
and get some kind of treatment without losing their career, because it's you say, okay, it's better that you lose your career and live than kill yourself.
That's
But
right.
at the same time, if I don't realize I'm at the point I'm going to kill myself one night, I don't want to lose my career. I got a family to feed. I have a life to do here. So we, as a profession, we have to work on that more. And everybody that's listening to me, if your agency does not have some kind of protocol and policy when there's a traumatic thing, that you sit down with somebody and everybody talk. This is what's going to get rid of this cancer from people. Help them put it in a box and do the right thing so they don't kill themselves, either on duty or after they retire. Very good friend of mine, had a great career, wonderful person, got depressed in his retirement and killed himself. And it was very hard for everybody to deal with that. So, Susan, the other thing, and I think we'll end on this one, because would you come back some more? Because I think we're going to look for case studies and we're going to throw stuff at you and have you give us some advice, because
Oh, I would
I
love
think this
to.
is
And
very helpful.
I have a few cases that I have a few clients that I've worked with who've given me permission to share their stories. And one of them in particular is just unbelievable.
That's
Like,
outstanding.
yeah. So I'll
We'll
leave you.
absolutely do this. I think it's a great idea to have you back as a regular panelist here to talk about this. I was teaching a class very recently, very recently, on juvenile investigations, how to investigate juveniles as victims, witnesses, and accused. And in the course of this, there was several officers that are longtime juvenile officers, been doing this for a long time. And I started talking about why it's important. You know, it's saving the kids, and the kids are traumatized and they do bad things, and we got to save who we can. I said, and it can affect us really badly, and we can have these problems, and because we kill ourselves. I talk about it. And this officer, who was a senior officer, been doing this a long time, he goes, I got to tell you something. It bothered me a lot, to where I took it home at night when I saw some bad, and he was from a very urban area, so a lot of bad things. And I said, what'd you do about it? And he says, I got therapy. I said, you did what? He goes, I got therapy. Did it help? He goes, yeah, saved my life, saved my career. He goes, and I don't mind saying it. He goes, it's kind of a little weird. I had therapy. What am I? He goes, but it really helped. And I said, I can't tell you how proud I am of you of saying that in front of this class, that this guy actually went and got help for himself. And we have to take that stigma away that it's bad. Go on your own. Go to your own doctor, somebody, and say, listen, don't tell my work. Just help me, you know, and if that's the concern that you have, but get the help, you know, don't do the wrong thing. Well, Susan, thank you very much. Now, listen, if somebody wants to reach out to you, do you take private clients in?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Okay. How would we reach out to you? How would somebody get Susan Marco,
You,
extraordinaire clinical?
the easiest way is to find me. You can find my website is very easy, susanmarco.com.
SusanMarco.com. That's outstanding. So if you're sitting out there and you're hearing me and you're saying, yeah, I might want to talk to somebody, or if you're saying, yeah, I need to talk to somebody, or if somebody in your family you think needs to talk to somebody, reach out to Susan. I can tell you, just from talking to her here a couple of minutes, I feel better already. And I don't even have any problems.
I want one addendum to that is that one of the cool things that COVID brought us as a field, you know, as a hypnotists in general, is that 5 years ago, if you had told me I would be seeing people on Zoom for hypnosis sessions, I would have said no way.
Right.
But it is very doable.
It is.
So I do see people in person and on, on Zoom. So
I think what we'll do in one of our future meetings, I'll have you hypnotize me.
okay.
And I'll see if I can find something in my background that I want to deal with. And just don't make me do the chicken dance or any of that kind of stuff. Don't make me look crazy, everybody. Susan, thank you very much for being here. And everybody, thank you for listening to the Blue Heart Podcast. I'm your host, Lieutenant Joe, and I'm very glad that you're here. And remember, be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. Be careful, my brothers and sisters. Do the right thing for our communities.